Hello. The project that I completed for Teachers in Action was vision boards at Lake George Elementary School in downtown Orlando. And you can see in the bottom right an example of one of the vision boards. I got this idea from my internship that I do with a company called Southwestern Advantage. We promote a lot of personal growth, and I learned how to complete a be, do, have vision board rather than just asking people what they want to do with their lives. So I wanted to incorporate this into a classroom with students with disabilities to be able to expand their mindset of what they can truly complete in their lives and to be able to give them some umph and like be a catalyst to help them see a little bit more past, I just want to be a doctor. And thank you for listening. So for the first part, my host was Lake George Elementary School with Mrs. Clemens. She's the after school coordinator. And the mission of this school is to provide a quality education through shared responsibility in a safe and supportive environment for all students to meet the challenges of a global society. So I actually got connected with this school when I was a teaching assistant with the honors program. So for honors symposium, so we were required to do service learning in a classroom and service learning with a program. So when I was a teaching assistant, we went to Lake George, worked with the Additions After School program. So Miss Clemens loved us, and I decided to reach out to her since I saw her email and ask if I could complete this project with her and the students she had and the students that we worked with. And it was really enjoyable to be able to reconnect. This is a Title I school, and this program is partially federally funded and also partially funded from the students' parents' pockets. And the activities that I actually completed and what I actually did was creating vision boards with the students and talking about the actual what a vision is. So I was the majority working with students with disabilities, but there were some students that didn't have disabilities. I didn't want to be exclusive. So I just made and modified my assignments to be able to be very, very relatable for both. But it was a really good experience. And overall, the idea was for them to take a larger scope of their life because there's studies that say that students within a smaller range of like income or lower range of income have a smaller worldview. And the more income they have in their family, the wider the worldview and world perspective. So let's say they don't know UCF is 20 minutes away, would be like a small worldview. So I thought this was a great opportunity to be able to promote creativity, promote love, promote encouragement, and promote them and their future, and talk about going to college. So it was a lot of fun. And we use Be Do Have. So basically, the premise of Be Do Have is most people start off in their lives with the things they want to have. So I want to have money. I want to have a great car. I want to have all these things. Okay, I want to travel. I want to teach. I want to do this, this, and this. Okay, I want to be empowering. I want to be a leader. I want to be a teacher. And this actually promotes is the opposite. And starting off with the characteristics and the things that we want to be. Okay, so I want to be a leader, be empowering, be inspirational, be someone who is honest, be a hard worker. I want to be a doctor. I want to be the president. All these things that we want to be. Okay, and then all these things we want to do. I want to travel. I want to go to college, something we really promoted when I was doing this. All these things that students want to do, and then everything they want to have. Because if you focus on that first, everything else will fall in line. And it was really cool to be able to share this with students because the way I started the presentation with them is I'd say, has anybody ever asked you what you want to be when you grow up? And they all raise their hands and they say yes. And it was really interesting because they usually only have one answer. And usually it's sports, or usually it was, I want to be a professional basketball player, I want to be an architect. And they didn't have a lot more substance, but they all had more engagement when we were actually participating. So it's just being able to promote that I think was really cool and really important. And I went once a week for 5 weeks and worked with a different grade each time. So just to get a little bit more into the demographics, so I worked with 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st grade on School Digger. It's actually ranked 1,390 out of 2,118 schools in the state of Florida for elementary schools. So there's 59.5% Hispanic population, 22.7% white, 12.8% African American. There's a large population of students who speak only Spanish. and a lot of students who are in the ESOL program. And it's 78.5% for a reduced lunch, which makes it a Title I school because it's above 75%. And the majority of the students that I got to work with either had ADHD. There was actually one deaf student, and there were a lot of students with IEPs that the actual teachers wouldn't specify exactly what the disability was. But we were able to really see the difference and be able to promote and help growth within each of the students. And I served about 25 students within the project with disabilities. I served more than that because not every single student that I got to work with had a disability, but it was a little bit in between. So these are some of the pictures, and it was fun. There was some students I was allowed to take pictures of, some students I wasn't, but this can show a wide range. And one thing I thought that was really cool was the first time when I was working with fifth grade, I gave them all like a template. I held up a piece of paper that said "Be do have" and told them to write that down. And every single person, every single student's paper looked exactly like mine. And I was like, no, you guys can do it however you like. So the next time I went in, I decided to just tell them, okay, let's start off with writing BE on our papers. Okay, let's talk about that. And every single student was different. And I thought it was really interesting because the students kept challenging me and asking me, well, how big do I write it? Where do I write it? What color? Where does it go? Where do I put this? And I'm like, do it however you like. Do it however you like. And it just like blew their minds because they're so used to, it seems like, the structure in schools of spoon feeding and telling them exactly what they need to do in order to meet a certain standard. And that was one thing I was really trying to challenge in this project, to be able to let their minds expand. I was in the gifted program when I was in school, and we got so much liberation for creativity. So I thought that would be something really cool to be able to incorporate in my project. I actually got to speak with one of the teachers after class, and she was telling me she completely saw what I was talking about, and she thought it was so cool because some kids even drew pictures, as you can see in the bottom. Some students, I think I can actually write on this way. That's cool. Maybe not. Let's see. That's okay. So some students would even draw pictures instead of writing, which was completely fine. And it was just a really neat experience. And then the perception of the differences. So initially I was really overwhelmed by this project because it was just seemed like a mighty feat. And once I got the idea, I realized that I was extremely capable of making an impact. I think it's really overwhelming at first thinking, how am I going to make a difference? So I was a lot less overwhelmed once I thought of my idea and made the connection again with Miss Clemens. And I really enjoyed the experience because I got to apply a lot of what I learned through self-development through my internship with students that probably don't get exposed to stuff like that often. The biggest experience that had the biggest influence on me and just completely blew my mind was, you can actually see it on the previous slide. There's a picture. There's a second grader, and he's doing it, and he was at first like super just everywhere. I couldn't get him to sit down. I couldn't get him to listen. But eventually, I was promoting positive behavior, thanking kids for being quiet and doing it, and it was really cool. And he eventually got the hang of it. And he writes, "Be, do, have," and he creates another column that says, "Why?" And he wrote, "Because it's my destiny." And it was just like the coolest thing ever because you could really see that his brain is racking and really working. And it was cool to be able to have some type of, wow, he just challenged my own perceptions of this project and what we're doing. That's so important. And I mean, one of the things he wanted to do was create a lightsaber of markers. So I don't know if that's really his destiny, but overall, he's a second grader. Overall, his ideas and his brain was there, and it was a really cool experience. And the students taught me just as much as I was able to teach them. Connections to my course. So there are a lot of things that I better understand now, but if I were to just put it into 3 topics, the biggest thing is promoting positive behavior and trying to ignore negative behavior, rather than just giving all my attention to the negative behavior in a classroom. And also realizing that that negative behavior is not something to be punished, but an area of growth for that student. That's a completely switch of a mindset for me, like a paradigm shift of, oh, that makes sense. So that was really cool to be able to see and understand better. And another part is the lack of parent participation and a student not being diagnosed with a disability, because that puts a lot of hindrance on a teacher. And I was talking to some of the teachers about this, and they were really just giving me further insight. And then the last thing was just the importance of developing life skills for students with disabilities. I think oftentimes us as teachers get so involved in the curriculum and what we have to do in testing that we forget to just develop the whole child. And that's even what these teachers were telling me. They were like, oh, we never have time for stuff like this. This is awesome that you're coming in. And I was like, how do you not have time for stuff like this? This is so important. So stuff like that I thought was extremely impactful and very cool. And another big thing that I've learned from this course and got to see in practice was my verbiage. So I would hear teachers saying things like the disability first and the student second. And even when I was typing this, I wanted to write disabled student. And I was like, no, no, no. And I caught myself, but I was able to really understand and hear the difference in action. And as a future teacher, I'm definitely going to use these qualities and these different skills that I'm learning, because everything is so applicable, especially since there's no pressure on curriculum when we're completing these projects. I think it's really, really positive that we get to fail, mess up, and succeed without any pressure from the outside of exactly what things need to do and look like. Civic engagement. So this is so important. So I truly believe that each of us have a duty to be engaged in our community and promoting growth. If we're not doing that, then we're not helping our community grow. Then there's no purpose in us being in that community, because we're just taking rather than giving. And I believe that civic engagement serves the purpose of giving each person shared ownership in the growth of the community. If people don't feel like they have any ownership in a community and their growth, then they're not going to do much to it or with it. Same thing goes for clubs in college and classrooms and classroom growth. And like, honestly, I love service learning. I think it's a great way for people and students to learn. It's always my favorite part of the class, and it gives each student their own unique journey, which I think is very important. And it has definitely motivated me to get more involved within my community and going back to Lake George more often. Lake George is kind of like 35 minutes away, so it's a little far. But overall, I want to go back to be able to do other self-development programs with these students, because I truly felt like I was making an impact not only on the students but also on myself. And to move on from there, my final thoughts and reflections. So I think that the best way for other people to move towards empathy and understanding of students with disabilities is just to get involved. Because we can teach it and talk and explain, but until they actually are sitting there with the student and see that breakthrough, and they see what a student can do and they understand it better, they're not gonna get to that level. And teachers play a really large role in facilitating this, especially with parents. And they're, I believe, the traffic cops of education. So we're the ones who are really directing traffic and helping accidents not happen and helping people get to where they need to go, but we can't actually control anything. So if someone wants to run through our traffic sign, they're allowed to. And if someone wants to obey it and really work with us and help us guide traffic, then that's how it works too. So we don't actually have control, but we have a great influence and a very large role. And overall, this has been my favorite part of the course. And one big thing that I thought was really cool was I actually felt like I made an impact on the teachers, because I got feedback from teachers that was like, wow, that was really cool. I've never thought of doing something like that. Or, wow, we will always want to do stuff like this, but we never have time to do it with our kids or time to plan it. And Miss Clemens even got feedback from a teacher about my work and what I was doing in the classroom. And she told me, the teacher yesterday was very impressed with your work. And that felt really good, and it made me feel appreciated. And what's appreciated is duplicated, right? And it made me want to come back and serve more. And I think that's another really important part of civic engagement, is promoting the positive impact that people make, so people feel good and they want to continue serving and they really see the broad perspective. But overall, that is my project, and I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed this course. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening.